Hey Switch 2 fans, Nintendo's had to defend the Switch 2's perceived lack of innovation. Do you think the Nintendo Switch 2 doesn't have much innovation? Let me know in the comment section down below. We're going to get into this article from Nintendo Life, but before we do, hit the like, subscribe, click the bell icon. You know, I know the Nintendo Switch 2 isn't the most innovative, crazy, wild new console that Nintendo's obviously put out. I think that probably goes to the Wii U, obviously the DS when the DS first launched, with the two screens and the stylus and stuff like that. I know it's a safe upgrade. The Switch 2 is one of the most successful consoles of all time, and I know it's not crazy. I would call it a safe upgrade, but we did get a couple of new features: the new mouse control, the game chat feature, the magnetic Joy-Cons, game key cards that don't have the game on them. But overall, I think it's a pretty solid upgrade. Let me know what you think. But let's get into the article. Anyways, before we do, check all the links down below in the video description, as well as the link to all the micro SD cards that are compatible with the Switch. Check them out, as well as the JSOX accessories down below. And also, if you haven't got a Switch 2, check the link down below and check my channel page for the 24-hour stock tracking stream that plays an alarm the second Switch 2 restocks at all the major retailers. Keep it up in the background. Come chat to the great community we have on there. It's a real cool place to hang out. But yeah, definitely check that out and check the description out. Please do. So they basically said, we feel that it's a very Nintendo-like product. Nintendo's released its latest Q&A transcript off the back of its financial results for fiscal year 2025, and in it, President Shuntaro Furukawa he had to defend with a sword and shield the Switch 2's perceived lack of innovation, with one investor questioning whether the Switch 2 is a bridge to a more innovative next-gen console yet to be announced. Can you imagine if there was? Can you imagine if the Nintendo Switch 2 was just like a mid-gen upgrade after 8 years? And Nintendo next year, we're like, oh, we have a surprise. A brand new console, completely innovative. It's got VR. It's got holographic display. It's got all these crazy new features. We fooled you guys. We fooled you. Made you think the Switch 2 was the next gen console. No, we've got something way bigger and better. Imagine being the investor that asked that. I mean, that is a little bit of an insult probably to the boss of Nintendo. Like, one of your investors saying, is the Switch 2 just like a stopgap to the real innovative next gen Switch? I wish it was. I mean, that'd be kind of cool. Oh, honestly, the Switch 2 is pretty cool. I like it, but I'm not gonna lie, it would have been cool if it was a little bit more, innovative and different, right? Let me know what you think. God, dude, one investor questioning whether the Switch 2 is a bridge to a more innovative next-gen console yet to be announced. I mean, it could be. Furukawa stated that software developers have come to require a more powerful hardware over the last 8 years. Yeah, software developers they've come to require more powerful hardware over the last 8 years. Well, in all fairness, if Furukawa knew that, they have. Go check my video out where we took a look at the recently leaked and revealed Switch 2 motherboard. They've basically found out that the SoC for the Switch 2, the actual chip that contains the CPU and GPU, is from 2021, so it's old hardware as it is, and the benchmarks didn't look too great compared to other competing devices, I'll be honest with you. At least other handhelds and at least other actual home consoles like the Xbox Series S. I was surprised to see how much weaker the Switch 2 is compared to the Series S. So if he believes that, then why did they not, put something in the Switch 2 that was just a little bit more relevant, a little bit more modern, something that maybe came out a year and a half ago. Why a 4-year SoC? That's what I don't get. So he knows that developers need more powerful hardware, but they chose to go with a 4-year-old chip anyway. I don't know. Anyways, so Nintendo made this a fundamental goal in creating the Switch 2. I mean, it's a 4-year-old chip, dude. You're kind of. That makes no sense. He's like, we know that software developers have come to require more powerful hardware over the last 8 years. That's why we decided to use a 4-year-old NVIDIA chip. That makes no sense, Furukawa, dude. He also said, I mean, I'm not trying to dog on the Switch 2 here. Obviously, the Switch 2, maybe it did get delayed for 4 years. We've talked about that. The Switch 2 was maybe delayed for 4 years. For whatever reason. Obviously, the games might not have been ready. We could have seen upgrades to, they could have. What have Nintendo been doing for the last 4 years? If this, we saw rumors that they were going to release a Switch Pro or a Switch 2, 4 years ago, back in 2021, and the chip is from 2021. Why didn't they release the Switch 2 then? The only thing I could think of is the games weren't ready, or they needed to evaluate the market with the Steam Deck and everything coming out. I don't know. But, you know, you can't be saying that. We knew the developers wanted more powerful hardware, and we delivered on that. And then release a 4-year-old chip. You know, developers are needing something a bit more than that in 2025, unfortunately. He also says that while Switch 2 may not seem particularly innovative at first glance, he's keen to stress that the hardware and peripherals have been completely redesigned. They've been completely redesigned, if you mean by making them slightly bigger, right? They've obviously got a mouse laser sensor inside now to use your controllers as mice. That is, I guess, different, but the design overall is the same. I wouldn't say it's completely redesigned. Not to mention the new awesome mouse controls, of course. Yeah, I guess so. What's particularly interesting is that Furukawa specifically calls out Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bananza as titles that simply would not have been possible in the original Switch. I get that. That is true. Mario Kart World, an open world sort of Mario Kart where you could move between levels without loading screens and, you know, drive off track and go all sorts of different places. In Donkey Kong Bonanza, where you're smashing the environment and destructible environments, which I think is amazing. Destructible environments need to come back to games, mainstream games. I mean, look at Battlefield. Battlefield used to have that destructible environments. You'd shoot a bazooka at a wall in Battlefield and it would come crumbling down, and we had skyscrapers crashing down. Remember that level? God. We need destructible environments back again. It takes me back to Red Faction, where I used to play co-op multiplayer with my friend, and I used to get the RPG and just like keep shooting at the wall until there was like a 30-foot tunnel into the wall where I used to hide and then just camp out in this tunnel and keep killing my friend every time we came in. I love destructible environments. I'm going off tangent here, but yeah. He says the article says we're inclined to agree with this after our recent hands-on with both titles. Here's a look at the question and answer in full, translated via Google. So the investor asked, I would like to ask about the positioning of the Nintendo Switch 2. Will the new hardware be similar to the Switch, or is Nintendo Switch 2 a bridge to an innovative next-gen console that has yet to be announced? The Switch 2 doesn't seem to have much of a generational revolution. Is this just a one-off, or will the plan be to continue the concept of Nintendo Switch and update each function in the future rather than releasing hardware with a completely new concept? That is a good question. I mean, obviously, the Switch 2, I would say, is is a safe upgrade. I guess it's akin to something like, you know, the DS to the 3DS. You know, yes, it's a new console, but it shares a lot of the same features. The features are just better, bigger screen, you know, better controls, a couple of new things here and there. It's definitely a safe upgrade, I'd say. It's definitely not anything like from the Wii to the Wii U or the Nintendo 64 to the GameCube. It's definitely like a safe upgrade. Furukawa obviously said development of the Nintendo Switch 2 began as an official in-house project around 2019. So it began in 2019. You would think they would have started it the second the Switch 1 was released. He says, we're always researching and developing new hardware, including basic technical research. The Switch has been blessed with many good fortunes, and even in its 9th year, many customers are still playing it. On the other hand, over the past 8 years, software developers have come to need higher hardware processing performance in order to realize one of Nintendo's most important values, proposing new ways to play. Therefore, this time we aim to design hardware with a large capacity in terms of processing performance. We believe that games such as Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza offer new ways to play that were not possible on the Switch. As for question about innovativeness of the hardware, the Switch 2 may not look like it has changed much in appearance. However, in fact, both the hardware and peripherals have been completely redesigned. We feel that's a very Nintendo-like product, filled with various creative ideas and commitment of Nintendo's development team to developing hardware and software together. In the future, we will develop various titles centered on the Switch 2 and provide new play experiences. We aim to make the Switch 2 the new standard for Nintendo Switch by creating hardware that continues to surprise our customers. Nintendo's been in a bit of a rut as far as hardware performance goes. Nintendo's never been the most powerful console out there, right? And I think a lot of it has to do because, you know, there are, in relative terms, like a small company still. That is all they do. They don't have other branches, other investments. They don't make phones. They don't make computers. They don't make tablets. They don't make any other devices other than the Nintendo Switch and their gaming consoles, right? So they don't have the resources really to just whip up a brand new console in like a year and sell it the year after, like a lot of other companies do. And it's a bit of a bummer, and it holds them back a little bit. I would love to see Nintendo focus their experience, at least for the Nintendo Switch 3, if that is going to be what it's called, on something or at least optimizing and streamlining their process to make sure they can get the latest chip possible in their devices. I mean, if, rather than, obviously waiting for NVIDIA to make a chip and then spending 4 years developing for that chip and 5 years later, you're ready to release the product. If they were able to somehow work with NVIDIA or work with AMD, even if they swapped to AMD, and make a product that, a product that's easy to hot swap into their hardware, design the hardware, design the features, and then bring in a platform that can easily be swapped in and out for, generational upgrades, right? And have everything be seamless. That's what we expect, and that's what we've seen companies like Valve manage to do, right? And a lot of these AMD Windows gaming handhelds like the ROG Ally, Lenovo Legion Go, they build the architecture, the software on top of an existing platform that can be upgraded on a whim, essentially. And that's why we're able to see an ROG Ally 1, an ROG Ally X, an ROG Ally 2, which has just been leaked, which we're going to cover in another video. They're able to release hardware upgrades yearly and put in the latest chip that year. I mean, we've seen companies like Ioneo that are based in China that have made the Ioneo 2 and 2S and a lot of fully fledged powerful gaming PC handhelds, right? And they're able to slap the new SoC in it literally within months and sell a product a couple of months later within a 4-month period, right? They're able to do that. So I'd like to see NVIDIA and Nintendo work on that for the Nintendo Switch 3, streamline that process and try and get it to where, they're able to work on an older chip, develop for the older chip, and then when a new chip's ready from NVIDIA, slot it into the existing hardware and be able to sell it with a new chip within months, right? I think that's what I'd like to see instead of this whole 4-year buffer period where they have to spend 4 years developing for the chip, and by the time the product is ready to sell, the chip's already 4 or 5 years old. I think that model is old-fashioned, and I think Nintendo really need to move with the times and release something that's just more powerful and more relevant to the time that it's getting released. I'm going on a rant here, I apologize. But either way, Nintendo's going to be a success either way, whether it's a 4-year-old chip, 5-year-old chip, hell, if they even released it as with a 10-year-old chip, people are going to buy it up, people are going to lap it up, and Nintendo first-party developers are going to just take advantage of every little bit of this. So obviously the games that are going to suffer on the Switch 2, much like the Switch 1 and other Nintendo devices, the games that are going to suffer are third-party games. Because at the end of the day, the majority of these third-party games are going to be played on other consoles. They're developed for other consoles, like Cyberpunk. Yeah, they've got Cyberpunk running on the Switch too, but at the end of the day, the Cyberpunk 2077 wasn't developed for the Nintendo Switch. It was developed for the PS5. It was developed for gaming PCs. It was developed for the Xbox Series X. And they ultimately are going to have to downscale it and develop it and optimize it to run on lesser hardware like the Switch 2. And that's just the way it's going to be. We're not going to see some of our favorite games come to the Switch 2, unfortunately, because of that hardware limitation, because Nintendo, are using a 4-year-old chip. But that's okay. First-party games are going to be awesome. Nintendo's going to be successful, and it's still going to be an awesome console to play games on. But like I says, if I have one wish, Nintendo, it is that you work with NVIDIA to get the latest chip at the time or close to release and slap it in the Switch 2. I know it's easier said than done, and I don't know anything about hardware design. I'm not an engineer, but if companies like Ioneo, small Chinese companies, niche companies, can slap a brand new 3-month-old AMD SoC inside a gaming handheld, then why can't Nintendo? And I know Nintendo sell millions and millions and millions, and it's as far as procurement and just getting that amount of chips ready within a couple of months is easier said than done. They do need a bit of time, maybe a year. But even if it was a year-old chip, 2-year-old chip, that would have been better than a 4-year-old chip. Anyways, I'm going to stop ranting and being a bummer and being a Debbie Downer. Anyways, like the video. Please like the video. I know if I've got you in a bad mood, I'm sorry. But please like the video. It really helps out. We cover Switch 2 multiple times a day. I still love the Switch 2. I'm so excited to play it. It's going to be awesome. And yeah, check the links in the description as well, and check our stock track and stream link down below as well if you want to get your hands on Switch 2. Anyways, I love you. I appreciate you all. See you in the next one. I'm Blaze McKay.
Let's go.